Hello, U.S. History students, and welcome to our discussion on ratifying the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution, as we know, becomes the supreme law of the land. And the delegates come together in Philadelphia, initially planning to revise the Articles of Confederation. They realize that they don't really work, and they're too weak. They offer far too much power to the states, not enough power to the federal government. And after Shays' Rebellion, they really need something that's stronger, that will give more of a structure to the government. So they scrap the Articles of Confederation and they create the Constitution, the primary author being James Madison. And in the Article 1 of the Constitution, they create a legislative branch. And this was one of the big debates when they were determining what to do, because Virginia and other large states felt that they should have a legislature that was based on population, because that would allow for more representation for them. And the smaller states like New Jersey didn't think that that would be fair at all, because that would mean they would have less representation in Congress. And so we come up with a bicameral legislature to compromise between the two. So Article 1 of the Constitution sets out the legislative branch, or Congress. Congress has express powers to make the laws. They are able to levy taxes, meaning they're able to collect taxes, which is a very big change from the Articles of Confederation, because under the Articles, they could not collect taxes from the states. They're also able to coin money, which is also a big deal, because prior there was no national government currency. So if you went from Virginia to Maryland, you would have to exchange your money. And the reason being is because each state was an individual governmental entity. A state in the grand scheme of government is actually a country. So we are one country made up of several countries. It's kind of confusing. But you would have to exchange your money every time you would go across state lines. With the Constitution, there's a national currency. That's why if you go from like Texas to Oklahoma, you don't have to exchange your money. It's the same money. They can also regulate trade, declare war, and allow new states into the Union. There's also something we call the elastic clause within the Constitution, and that allows Congress to create laws that are necessary and proper to the functioning of the nation. Now, this clause can sometimes be really confusing, because what does necessary and proper mean? Well, basically, Congress is only limited to the powers specifically written in the Constitution. So, like, they can determine who can be a citizen, how to collect taxes, establish post offices, set up a judiciary. And those are 17 powers that basically are explicitly written in the Constitution in Section 8 of Article 1. And the necessary and proper clause basically gives Congress the power to enact those other 17. So the existence of the list of 17 implies that Congress can make laws necessary to ensure that those powers can be carried out. And Clause 18 of Section 8 that specifically reads, "To make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department or officer thereof." So basically, in simplistic terms, it gives the Congress the power to do everything else that it's supposed to do. So Congress has two houses because we are a bicameral legislature. So you have the House of Representatives, which is the compromise for Virginia. It's based on state population, which is why every 10 years the census is so important, because that allows us to know, do we get more people in Congress? Do we get less people in Congress? Each representative, congressman or congresswoman, serves a 2-year term. They are elected by the people, and in order to serve in Congress, you must be 25 years old. All revenue bills must originate in the House of Representatives. The Senate, which is the other house of Congress, is the New Jersey Plan compromise. In the Senate, each state gets 2 senators. Each senator serves for 6-year terms, and under the 16th Amendment to the Constitution, these people are now directly elected by the people as opposed to being appointed by the president. And in order for you to become a senator, you must be at least 30 years old. And the Senate has the power to approve treaties, presidential appointments, and is the final decision on presidential impeachments. And it's a difference between the House of Representatives and the Senate and the president on how a law gets created. So a bill is introduced into the House of Representatives. They refer to a standing committee and subcommittee to study, for hearings, revisions, to the Rules Committee to set the conditions for the debates and amendments. And then it's debated, and if passed, it goes to the Senate, because it cannot go to the president without going to the Senate. So it goes to the Senate, it's introduced in the Senate, it's referred to standing committee and subcommittee for study, hearings and revisions, approval, and then it's debated. If it passes, it goes to the House. So it's kind of complicated. And then it goes to a conference committee that resolves the differences between the House versions and the Senate versions, because each one kind of creates their own version. And then the House and Senate vote on final passage. If it's approved, the bill goes to the president. And I want to play you a video really quickly that'll kind of give you a better understanding of this.
I'm just a bill.
Whew, you sure gotta climb a lot of steps to get to this Capitol building here in Washington. Well, I wonder who that sad little scrap of paper is.
I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's a long, long journey to the capital city. It's a long, long wait while I'm sitting in committee, but I know I'll be a law someday. At least I hope and pray that I will, but today I am still just a bill.
Gee, Bill, you certainly have a lot of patience and courage.
Well, I got this far. When I started, I wasn't even a bill. I was just an idea. Some folks back home decided they wanted a law passed, so they called their local congressman, and he said, "You're right, there ought to be a law." And he sat down and wrote me out and introduced me to Congress, and I became a bill. And I'll remain a bill until they decide to make me a law. I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And I got as far as Capitol Hill. Well, now I'm stuck in committee, and I'll sit here and wait while a few key congressmen discuss and debate whether they should let me be a law. I hope and pray that they will, but today I'm still just a bill.
Listen to those congressmen arguing. Is all that discussion and debate about you?
Yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones. Most bills never even get this far. I hope they decide to report on me favorably, otherwise I may die.
Die?
Yeah, die in committee. Oh, but it looks like I'm going to live. Now I go to the House of Representatives and they vote on me.
If they vote yes, what happens?
Then I go to the Senate and the whole thing starts all over again.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill. And if they vote for me on Capitol Hill, well then I'm off to the White House where I'll wait in a line with a lot of other bills for the president to sign. And if he signs me, then I'll be along. I hope and pray that he will, but today I'm still just a bill.
You mean even if the whole Congress says you should be a law, the president can still say no?
Yes, that's called a veto. If the president vetoes me, I have to go back to Congress and they vote on me again, and by that time you're sold.
By that time, it's very unlikely that you become a law. It's not easy to become a law, is it?
No, but how I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill.
He signed your bill. Now you're a law.
Oh, yes.
So moving on from Article 1, Article 2 of the Constitution creates the executive branch. This is made up of the president, the vice president, and the bureaucracy, which is basically all of his advisors and cabinet members and things of that nature. So the role of the president is to enforce the law. That's his main responsibility. To conduct foreign policy, serve as commander-in-chief of the military, even though he is a civilian, to appoint judges and ambassadors, and to provide leadership for the nation. The president is aided by several federal agencies and 15 executive departments, and each one has a secretary who serves in the president's cabinet. So, for example, in the Washington administration that we're going to discuss next, you have Secretary of the Treasury, Secretary of State, Secretary of War, things of that nature. And each secretary has its own department that they are over, and they conduct some form of federal policy. The president is elected to a 4-year term. They must be a native-born American, and they have to be at least 35 years old. Those are the 3 constitutional outlined things that a president must be before they're elected. It is also important to understand that the president is not directly elected by the people, but by an electoral college. And basically, how this works is there are several people that are dedicated to making up the Electoral College. It's a group of citizens that come together, and as the regular people cast their votes for the presidential candidate, those votes actually count towards a group of electors. That is the Electoral College, those people previously mentioned. And those people then pledge to vote for a specific candidate in the Electoral College. And so the presidential, vice presidential pair who wins the popular vote in, let's say, Texas, receives that state's Electoral College votes. So basically the Electoral College takes the votes of the people into consideration, and then whoever wins the popular vote in that state gets that state's vote for the Electoral College, and each state has a different number of Electoral College votes. So in the end, the winner of the race is the candidate who receives a majority, 270 or more, of the 538 Electoral College votes. And the results of the election aren't official until the President of the Senate counts the votes out loud in a special joint session of Congress that's held in early January. So we'll know basically who wins probably this day after, but it's not official until after they go through this whole process. So in Article 3 of the Constitution, we create the Judicial Branch, which is made up of the Supreme Court and other lower federal courts, such as the Court of Appeals, the district courts, and the military courts. The role of the Judicial Branch is to interpret the law and to promote justice. The Supreme Court has the power to declare laws unconstitutional, which is called judicial review, and there are no specific qualifications to become a federal judge. So in majority of cases, a Supreme Court justice is a person who has been a judge on a lower federal court. This is not expressly designated in the Constitution, but it's often the way it goes. And there is no term limit for a Supreme Court justice. They serve for life. So you can, if you're elected to the Supreme Court or nominated to the Supreme Court and you go through everything and you're confirmed, you have the opportunity to hold that office until you die. For example, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who just passed away recently, was on the court for 27 years, and she could have retired. She chose not to. So they're there for life, pending retirement or impeachment if they do something wrong. The Supremacy Clause of Article 5 states that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And this basically just means that a state law cannot supersede the Constitution, which means it can't go against the Constitution. From May to September of 1787, delegates at the Constitutional Convention work out the framework for the Constitution. So it takes them several months of discussion and deliberation. But once they have the document, it then has to be ratified or approved of by at least 9 of the 13 states if it's going to replace the Articles of Confederation. And many Americans are really concerned about possibility of tyranny because the Constitution gives more power to the national government than it does the state governments. And so they're really afraid of another Great Britain coming in and having too much power and then getting tyrannical and then them having to break away again. Those who opposed the Constitution fear a stronger national government and wanted the states to remain more powerful. These people are Anti-Federalists. Anti-Federalists were led by Patrick Henry and Sam Adams, who really fear that if the federal government is stronger than the state governments, that we're basically going to end up exactly where we were. We just fought this revolution, we just gained our independence, and now you're wanting me to go back to the same thing? Not going to do it. Show me that age and country where the rights and liberties of the people were placed on the sole chance of their rulers being good men without consequent loss of liberty. And this is an excerpt from a speech that Patrick Henry gave in 1788 in opposition to the Constitution. He's basically trying to convince people that if we just let our rulers do their job and assume that they're good men and assume that they're going to do what we want them to do, then we might lose our liberty. Those who support the Constitution and a stronger federal government are called Federalists. These leaders are James Madison, the predominant author of the document, Alexander Hamilton, and John Jay. And they set out to write a series of essays that promote the Constitution to the public. And they're originally going to write 25 essays basically saying why we should have this Constitution. They end up writing 85 over the course of 3 months. Hamilton writing 51 of the 85. John Jay gets sick. James Madison just stops writing. And so at the end, there's 85 essays published in newspapers around the country trying to gain support, trying to get public support for this new document. If the federal government is entrusted with the care of the common defense, that government ought to be clothed with all the powers requisite to complete execution of its trust. This comes from Federalist 23. Nothing is more certain than an indispensable necessity of government. People must cede some of their natural rights in order to vest it with the requisite powers. This is Federalist 2. And he's basically saying, you must give up some of your natural rights in order to give them to the country so it can run. The smaller the number of individuals composing a majority, the more easily will they execute their plans of oppression. Extend the sphere and you take in a greater variety of parties and interests. You make it less probable that a majority of the whole will invade the rights of other citizens. in Federalist 10. And so basically what they're saying is, this is why you should support our plan for the new government. And they go through and lay out every bit of it and argue why you should agree. And so it goes from a general introduction, foreign force and influence, hostilities between the states, safeguarding and against domestic faction and insurrection, economy, all the way down to things of taxation and powers conferred by the Constitution, the executive branch, the House of Representatives. Everything is outlined, basically, like why you should approve of this, and here's what it does. Some states ratify the Constitution quickly, but states with a larger majority of anti-federalists refuse to ratify or approve without a Bill of Rights that explicitly protects their liberties, because they don't believe that the federal government will respect their liberties unless it's explicitly written in the Constitution. So in 1789, the Bill of Rights is introduced, and the last two states ratify the Constitution by 1790. So it takes about 3 years for everybody to get on board. New Hampshire was the 9th state to ratify the Constitution, which goes into effect in 1789. But the Federalists wanted all 13 states to ratify the new government. They wanted it to be unanimous because they wanted everybody to be a union and in agreement. So in 1789, when New Hampshire agrees, it's ratified. It's officially our governing body, but it takes until 1790 for all 13 states to go ahead and agree. And the last state to agree is Rhode Island in May of 1790. So the Bill of Rights is approved in 1791, and that's our first 10 amendments that set out the protections against personal rights of the people. So, of course, our First Amendment is freedom of press, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom to peacefully assemble. Amendment 2 is the right to bear arms. Amendment 3 bans the government from requiring regular people to let soldiers stay in their homes. Amendment 4 protects you from unlawful search and seizure. And so basically it says that authorities have to have a warrant unless there's probable cause to search through your things. Amendment 5 gives you the rights if you are accused of something. So basically you have to be charged with a crime. You have the right to not say anything that would incriminate you. So when you hear people say, I plead the fifth, that means I'm not saying anything because something I might say you might use against me. Protects against double jeopardy, things of that nature. 6 is the right to a speedy and public trial. So if you are accused of some sort of criminal thing, you have the right to a speedy trial, and it's public so that nothing is hidden. And you have the right to a trial of a jury of your peers. And as we move through history, the definition of jury of your peers becomes more and more contested. So for example, if you're a white woman, there should be some white women on that jury. If you're a Hispanic man, there should be some Hispanic men on that jury. We'll get more into that in some constitutional or Supreme Court cases here soon. 7th Amendment is trial by jury. And that kind of outlines how much you can pay in bail and what the jury actually should consist of. 8 is you can't be charged excessive bail, and you are free from having to deal with cruel and unusual punishment. So back then, cruel and unusual punishment would be like tar and feathering, where they would strip you naked and cover your body in hot tar and then pour feathers on you. 9 is basically all the rights that you have under the Constitution cannot be taken away from you. And then 10 basically says whatever powers are not directly stated in the Constitution are reserved to the states or the people themselves. Today, the Constitution is the oldest existing government in the written government in the world. It's been used as a model for multiple other nations, including France, who fought their revolution shortly after ours. And it's lived with us throughout almost 250 years. And it's really important to understand that the Constitution is considered a living document because we can amend it and we can change it as our times change. So we can make it better fit our own times. And this is an amazing thing that the Founding Fathers did. They had the foresight to see that this would be necessary. We would need to change it and make it fit our modern world. So this brings us to the end of our Constitution discussion. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.